Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. It is the stretch run of our baseball previews here on CPD, so thank you all so much for hanging out today. As always, we are presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca for that great Calgary swag, including Cannons gear right there. Baseball season, gotta get the Cannons hat, right? So check that out there. And of course, get that energy from Swift Energy. Some really, really good drinks that can help you with the focus. I'm taping a bunch of these today, and Swift Energy helping things out along the way. Let's get that back up there. Use that code PKPrimetime for the 25% off. We're about a week away from being able to go live again with twitch.tv/primetimepk and on YouTube. So get ready for all of that as we spring into action with the start of the baseball season coming up. Hockey playoffs, basketball playoffs, and of course, WrestleMania season. So really going to start ramping things up again when I get back from Japan. Today, we're going to look at the baseball teams that needed the most this season. Who has the most pressure on them going into the 2025 year? And then for the Blue Jays, we are going to look at the X factors. Who are going to be the guys? Last week, we looked at players who could decide the season. This might not be as extreme for the Jays, but who are going to be those X factors to decide how this season goes for Toronto? Going to look at that coming up today. As always, we put the little disclaimer at the top. I am recording this on March 8th, off in Japan, and so just wanted to get all the Major League Baseball preview stuff in while I was away. So if a couple things are a little bit dated, apologize. I do still think there's a lot of good info in here, but yeah, that's just your disclaimer. Still a lot of good stuff in here, but maybe an injury or two that might have been missed along the way. So anyway, let's dive in. I've been saying that way too much on these, but let's get ready for the start of the baseball season and who's feeling the pressure as we look at the teams that needed the most in the baseball season this year. The Major League Baseball season is right around the corner. It's begun for a couple of teams, and that means a lot of pressure. The fun in the sun in the spring is one thing, but once the lights are on bright, who has all the pressure on them this season? Let's talk about it. And we begin with the New York Yankees. There is always pressure on the New York Yankees. They are perpetually in this list, but specifically this year, this is their window. They extended Aaron Boone. They got outbid for the biggest free agent in the sport in Soto. The Yankees don't get outbid for free agents of their own that they want. Now, they bounced back in a good way, which means anything less than a World Series is a loss for the New York Yankees. And it does kind of feel like, we've talked about a little bit in these previews, how the Red Sox have gotten a little bit better, how the Mariners could be a bit of a threat. But this should be at least an American League championship for the Yankees this year. But it really, the pressure is on to fly banner number 28 for this team. They are always under that pressure, but it does kind of feel like with Judge, as that contract starts to age a little bit, and like how many great playoff performances from Stanton are you going to have? Garrett Cole, already some injury problems in spring training at the time of this recording. Max Fried has not exactly been the picture of health. That there is going to be a bit of a reckoning, I guess, for this Yankee team at some point. And so the window is now for this team. And for a lot of teams, not winning a championship in 15, 16 years, that's life. I'm going on a lifetime with the Toronto Blue Jays. But for the Yankees, that type of a run is unacceptable and unheard of. They're even allowing guys to have beards. That's the pressure they're feeling this year. So the Yankees, they are always in that window. Speaking of my favorite team, and maybe there is a bit of bias here, but the Toronto Blue Jays, I think, are one of the teams that needed the most, and honestly, probably more than the Yankees this season. This was supposed to be a golden period for Toronto when everything was starting, and you were going through like 15 and 16 with Bautista and Donaldson and Encarnacion and all of those guys, David Price for a minute. You knew that at some point it was going to, again, that bill was going to come due. But they recovered in a way where you were really excited about Bo and Vladdy. And then at the time, it's Cavan Biggio, it's Lourdes Gurriel Jr. They make a great trade for Francisco Liriano, where they bring in a kid named Teoscar Hernandez. This was going to be a golden period for the Toronto Blue Jays. And instead, there is 1 year left on Bo and Vladdy's contracts. Cavan can't get a job in Major League Baseball. Lourdes was traded away, and Teoscar Hernandez was dealt away as well. So the last two pieces of what was supposed to be a golden period for the Blue Jays could potentially leave with the same amount of playoff wins as I have. That is unacceptable for this Blue Jays team. And who knows what happens next offseason, but it's not like there's a lot of promising pieces coming down the pipeline. This is a win now season if you have ever seen one for the Toronto Blue Jays. And so they are under so much pressure. If this year doesn't go well, at the deadline, they completely blow it up and they start it over. But then the manager is fired, the GM's fired, and most people would be calling for the president to get canned as well. And then anyone who is of any value on this team gets traded. And it is a complete start over in a division that's really, really tough to start over in. So no pressure, but all the pressure on the Blue Jays. We're staying in the East, but with a bit more of a national flavor for the next one, as the Philadelphia Phillies. They have so much talent, and they've had a trip to the World Series before, and that's so much fun for them. But you know that the Braves aren't going to be down for long with the GM that they have. You know that the Mets every year are just only going to get better as the seasons go along with the money that they have and the resources that they're putting into everything, not just free agents, but the drafting, developing, scouting, all of those things. This is a time where the Mets are still kind of figuring their stuff out, and where it feels like the Braves have kind of taken a step back. There's a lot of pressure on the Phillies to have a real breakout year as Harper is maybe winding down, as you don't know how many great years you have left with Wheeler and Nola. So I think there's a lot of pressure on the Phillies to kind of break through. Baltimore is up next, so 3 teams in the American League East. They have a very bright future and a lot of talent, but there's going to be some frustration if they don't take a step forward this year, and they did not have a good offseason. The pitching staff only got worse. It did not get better at all. So there is quite a bit of pressure and quite a bit of frustration around this Orioles team, and if you are going to, we just talked about it with Toronto, you don't want to waste these prime rookie contract years of Rushman and Holiday and Gunnar Henderson and those types of guys. So they did not get better this offseason. They are banking on a lot of internal growth from some of their young pieces to get better and to kind of meet the expectations that you would assume they have for a team that has the young talent that they have. And now the last one, the San Diego Padres. They have been big spenders for a really long time. And basically all they have to show for it is a fantastic playoff series a year ago with the Los Angeles Dodgers. But now I think you need to have some real wins to validate the constant aggressive approach that this front office has had. And I don't think if they don't win this year, they're going to blow everything up or anything like that. Like they have talented young pieces, but it is, I think, time to see this team take a real and meaningful progressive step toward a championship and at least be a real threat to be a championship this season with some of the exciting young talent that you have been able to cultivate over the last couple of seasons. And instead of, well, we took a big swing with Soto and missed, and so we got a couple guys back. This needs to be we took a real swing with a couple guys and we hit, and now we're in the National League Championship Series and we're a couple of wins away from a World Series. There needs to be that type of a progression here out in San Diego, and it's going to be tough. We've talked at length on these previews about how much better I think the Diamondbacks are going to be. And obviously the Dodgers are very good and not going anywhere. But this is now up to the Padres to really take that step and cause some problems in the National League. So those are the teams that are feeling the heat and the most pressure going into the 2025 Major League Baseball season. Let's go back to the Toronto Blue Jays now, as they are the team that I pay the most attention to, so they get a little bit extra attention on these preview episodes. We've looked at guys who could break out, bounce back, and fall off. But now it's the X factors, the guys who could really help decide how this season goes. A very important season, as we just talked about, for the Toronto Blue Jays. So who are the X factors for the Jays going into the going into the 25 season? Let's talk about it. The Toronto Blue Jays are under a lot of pressure this season with a lot of players needing to step up. But they made some moves in the offseason to try to get back to where they think they can be. And while you don't want to put the pressure on too many players, you know, or you at least hope that the stars will step up. But what about everyone else? Who could contribute to a big Blue Jay season this year? Going to look at a couple of X factors for the Jays in the 2025 season. We'll begin with Chris Bassitt in the starting rotation. I think they need him to be a real strong number 3. you don't want to be relying on 40-year-old Max Scherzer to be a dominant ace type again. I think you want him to just be a number 4. And you don't want to bank on Bowden Francis to just be that guy. And so I think you want to give him a little bit of wiggle room that if he happens to drop down to be a number 5 for a little bit, it's not going to kill you. And so in that spot now, it has to be Chris Bassitt, who bit up and down. But if he can be a genuine, real number 3 for the Toronto Blue Jays and be a, like, not just a, well, he's the 3rd best pitcher because everyone else sucks, but just be a guy who can really be middle of your rotation guy, starting a playoff game and you feel comfortable with it guy, then this turns into one of the best pitching staffs in baseball, with Gausman and Barrios, you are assuming, doing their thing at the top. And so we have talked a lot this offseason about how the Blue Jays maybe needed one more starter. Part of that was to build in a little bit of a cushion if Bassitt wasn't really that. But if he does stay what he has done, if he can just basically pitch to his baseball reference page, then this stays one of the better pitching staffs in all of baseball. But I think they're really going to need him this season. Jeff Hoffman is the other one. So we're saying pitching in this part of the episode. Anyway, I think they actually have a really good middle relief and set up kind of a situation. Swanson, at the time of this recording, banged up, and we'll see what goes on with him. But, like, 7th inning, 8th inning, to be able to go with Jimmy Garcia and Chad Green, I would like another lefty, but I do think that that they've actually built out a pretty solid bullpen there. Hoffman, if he is an all-star, then this bullpen is a strength for the Blue Jays. And he was just an all-star last year, right? Like, he is capable of doing that. You're not asking Genesis Cabrera to come in and be an all-star. You're just asking an all-star to be an all-star again. If he is that guy, then this is actually a very good bullpen. You can go with Garcia 7th, Green 8th, and all-star closer in the 9th. That's a way to win a lot of ball games and take pressure off of a pitching staff that we talked about before. If he's a dud, and if it's kind of a coming back down to earth a little bit for him, then I just think that's a bit of a setback, because I really don't think that this team does a whole lot when you have Green and you have Garcia moving up into that closer role. At that point, it's a lot of just like mid, and you don't have a lot of confidence in that. And this team can't afford to give any games away this season. So there is a real importance, I think, placed on the closer position this year for the Toronto Blue Jays. And the last X factor here, and this is maybe just being a little bit too easy, any kid stepping up. This offense, we talked about it at length. Springer, Bichette, Guerrero, Santander at the top. You feel good about that. Springer, you have a little bit of a concern. But Bo's going to bounce back. You just know it. Vlad is genuinely one of the best hitters in baseball, and Santander hits the hell out of baseballs. But you are going to need a kid to step up. Like Kirk is due for a bounce back, as we talked about earlier in the month. But he can't really, I don't think you want him to be your number 5. Also, he is going to be catching a lot this year, and backup catcher sucks on this team. So you are going to need an Orelvis. You're going to need a Barger. You're going to need a Wagner. You're going to need a Loperfido. You're going to need one of those guys to step up and be a real, genuine threat in this offense for them to, I think, have any chance of being a playoff team. Last year, it was just Vladdy hitting tanks with nobody on. This year, you either need to be able to crack into that top 4 and get on for them, or be able to follow that up and turn 1-run innings into 4-run innings with some rallies and help turn that lineup over. So this team needs someone to step up, one of the kids to step up in a big way and be a real X factor in this offense. If they can do that, then this is probably a playoff team. If they can't, then we're probably talking about a bunch of dudes who are in AA right now playing with the Blue Jays by the time August and September roll around. So again, no pressure, kids. Just all the pressure. That's going to do it for the episode today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out as these baseball previews have been rolling on while I've been off gallivanting on vacation. Coming up on tomorrow's show, I have made a lot of proclamations as the year has gone on, as the preseason has gone on. I'll admit, few I'm worried about. So tomorrow we're going to look at the things I'm worried I'm wrong about and go through all of those. And then we're going to look at, it's a simple game. It's called In or Out. We're going to look at 3 teams that I think are going to be out of the playoffs and 3 teams that I think are going to be in the postseason this year that weren't from a season ago. So that is what is coming up on the show tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you give us a like. A subscribe would really help. Let me know in the comments what you think about the teams under pressure. Did I miss anyone? Did I overstate some things? And for the X Factors, who is the X Factor that you think needs to break through for the Toronto Blue Jays? If you're listening in podcast form, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you leave a review or a follow or a 5-star or whatever it is on your podcast platform. Do that. And let's grow this thing a little bit more. Thank you guys so much. Talk to you again tomorrow. I am out.